Let us talk today about the dramatic monologue and see what the online resources have to say about it. English Grammar helpblog.wordpress.com writes this of the monologue. Monologue refers to a speech or a verbal presentation that a character gives to exhibit his ideas as well as thoughts in a loud manner. Through monologue, the character shares his thoughts with the audience or sometimes with another character. Moreover, it is a kind of literary device and it is quite common in plays, films, and sometimes in poetry, a non dramatic medium. The word monologue comes from the Greek word monos, that means alone, and logos refers to speech. However, there are two types of monologue: interior and dramatic monologue. In interior monologue, the character usually conveys his thoughts so that the audience can also get the experience. Moreover, it is remarkably noticeable in the plays, novels, and films. This kind of monologue is also signified as the stream of consciousness. On the other hand, dramatic monologue is a kind of monologue where a character addresses to the silent listener. It comprises theatrical qualities and it is also seen in poetry. Poetryfoundation.org remarks that a dramatic monologue is a poem in which an imagined speaker addresses a silent listener, usually not the reader. Britannica.com writes this of the dramatic monologue, that it is a poem written in the form of a speech of an individual character. It comprises into a single vivid scene a narrative sense of the speaker's history and psychological insight into his character. Though the form is chiefly associated with Robert Browning, who raised it to a highly sophisticated level in such poems as My Last Duchess, The Bishop Orders His Tomb at St. Praxed's Church, Fra Lippo Lippi, and Andrea del Sarto, it is actually much older. Many old English poems are dramatic monologues. For instance, The Wanderer and The Seafarer. The form is also common in folk ballads, a tradition that Robert Burns imitated with broad satiric effect in Holy Willie's Prayer. Browning's contribution to the form is one of subtlety of characterization and complexity of the dramatic situation, which the reader gradually pieces together from the casual remarks or digression of the speaker. The subject discussed is usually far less interesting than what is inadvertently revealed about the speaker himself. In My Last Duchess, in showing off a painting of his late wife, an Italian aristocrat reveals his cruelty to her. The form parallels the novelistic experiments with point of view in which the reader is left to assess the intelligence and reliability of the narrator. Later poets who successfully used the form were Ezra Pound in The River Merchant's Wife, a letter, T.S. Eliot in Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and Robert Frost in The Pauper Witch of Grafton. Interestingliterature.com also analyzes the dramatic monologue in these words. The dramatic monologue is a literary form that really came of age in the 1830s, thanks to Tennyson and Browning, most of all. Below, we have selected some of the greatest examples of the dramatic monologue, a poem spoken by a character rather than the poets themselves in a dramatic situation, whereby that character reveals their personality through their speech. There are some brilliant examples of dramatic monologues in English literature. Uh, Let me quote something from Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone, on shore. And when through scudding drifts the rainy Hyades vex the dim sea, I am become a name. Writers of dramatic monologues have often turned to mythical characters for their subjects and speakers, and this early Tennyson poem is such an example. A poem about growing old, but written when Tennyson was a young man in his early 20s. Ulysses has been read as a response to the death of Tennyson's friend Arthur Henry Hallam, who had died suddenly in 1833 in his early 20s. The poem takes the warrior Ulysses, the Roman name for Odysseus, as its focus and reveals an aging king who, having returned from the Trojan War, yearns to don his armor again and ride off in search of battle, glory, and adventure, leaving his poor wife Penelope behind, we might add. Tennyson uses the dramatic monologue to stirring effect, but the dramatic situation also invites us to question Ulysses' actions and especially the impact they have on his wife and son, whom he leaves behind again. Can Ulysses really sail off again in search of glory, or is he deluding himself? Let us also talk about Robert Browning's fantastic dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess. Uh, the poem begins with a dramatic suddenness. That's my last duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. The readers can understand that the event has begun earlier, but the poem begins from the middle to make the start dramatic. As the poem progresses, it becomes clear that only a single person speaks. The speaker is the Duke of Ferrara talking about his dead Duchess's portrait painted by Fra Pandolf. At several points of the poem, it becomes evident that there is a listener who remains silent. For example, when the Duke says, Will it please you sit and look at her? Or, Will it please you rise? We understand that someone is present around him. Later in the poem, we come to know that he is an emissary for that second marriage of the Duke. Throughout the poem, the listener does not talk, but his reactions are revealed through the Duke's speech. For example, the clue to understand the surprise in the emissary's face has been revealed by the Duke himself. So, not the first are you to turn and ask, Sir? We know he doesn't ask anything, but there has been a question in his expression. The main principle controlling the form of a dramatic monologue is that the speaker says to reveal his soul. In My Last Duchess, the Duke, while talking about the Duchess, he reveals his own mind. We understand that he is a possessive husband, a cruel person, a proud aristocrat, a greedy bridegroom. She ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. The Duke is also a connoisseur of artworks. He further reveals that the Duchess was an innocent, easy-going lady. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her. But who passed without much the same smile? This analysis of Duke's temperament are the essence of the dramatic monologue. To conclude our discussion, we can say that My Last Duchess is one of the best examples of dramatic monologue. It has all the elements that a dramatic monologue requires. This analysis is available at inamsnote.blogspot.com. Let us talk about the features of a dramatic monologue. And these features are available at literarydevices.net and at englishgrammarhelpblog.wordpress.com. The features, some of the common features that both these sites talk about are that in a dramatic monologue, there's a single person delivering a speech on one aspect of his life. The audience may or may not be present. The speaker reveals his temperament and character only through his speech. The most noticeable feature of a dramatic monologue is the use of I, and here I stands as a persona, usually or mostly different from the poet or the writer. The use of expressions as well as verbs that refer to the listener who is not directly appeared in the piece of literature. The tone of a dramatic monologue is casual, and the application of colloquial language is common in this kind of writing. The typical language of drama is the essence of a dramatic monologue, where you see, well are commonly used. The discovery of a personality is a prominent part of the dramatic monologue during a critical point of life. In the dramatic monologue, going beyond the limitation of one's self or experience is natural. An interest in the human psychology is usually observed in the dramatic monologues, and hence this literary device is well linked with the historical characters. Moreover, it acts as an instrument of a poet to scrutinize the heart of the human being. What is the function of a dramatic monologue? A monologue functions as a tool to give vent to one's thoughts. It provides an opportunity for the poets to use powerful words spoken through their characters. So the characters can express themselves or their ideas without an obstacle or hindrance. A dramatic monologue is also a convenient device to present different characters and their inner thoughts through verses.